The rocking chair creaked softly in time with Mary's quiet sighs. At 63, her days were often filled with the gentle rhythm of old age, but her heart held a deep, persistent ache. It wasn't the usual worries about aches and pains, or the changing world outside her window. No, her sorrow was far more personal, far more profound. Mary hadn't spoken to her daughter Sarah in what felt like an eternity. Each passing year only deepened the chasm between them, a silent canyon that swallowed every happy memory and replaced it with a hollow echo of what used to be. Mary would often gaze at a faded photograph on her mantelpiece, a younger Sarah, all bright eyes and a mischievous grin, clutching Mary's hand during a summer picnic. That image was a sharp, painful reminder of the laughter they once shared, the easy companionship that had somehow, tragically, vanished. Being estranged from Sarah, her only child, was a constant, heavy weight on Mary's soul. It was worse than any illness she'd ever faced, more crushing than any setback life had thrown her way. This silence, this absence, was the hardest thing Mary had ever endured, a wound that never seemed to heal, no matter how many years went by. She yearned for Sarah's voice, her presence, a simple hug. The silence in her home was often broken only by Mary's memories, which played like old, cherished films in her mind. She would close her eyes and drift back to a time when her world revolved around Sarah, and Sarah's world revolved around her. They weren't just mother and daughter, they were confidants, partners in crime, best friends. Mary remembered Saturday mornings spent baking cookies, Sarah's small hands dusted with flour, her giggles echoing through the kitchen. She recalled long talks stretched out on Sarah's bed, sharing secrets and dreams, planning futures together. There were the endless summer days at the park, pushing Sarah higher and higher on the swing, her joyful shouts filling the air. And the quiet evenings reading stories, Sarah snuggled close, her head resting on Mary's shoulder. Those moments were precious jewels in Mary's memory box, each one sparkling with love and connection. She missed their daily phone calls, the way Sarah would always know how to make her laugh, and the comfort of having her daughter near. The thought of those happy days, now so distant, brought a fresh wave of sadness. Mary longed for the simple joy of Sarah's presence, the warmth of their shared history. She missed her best friend more than words could say. The warmth of those memories, however, was always followed by a chill. Mary knew exactly when the happiness had started to fade, when the bright colors of their bond began to dull. It wasn't a slow drift, but a sudden, sharp tear, caused by a big fight years ago. The details were still fuzzy in Mary's mind, blurred by hurt and time, but the feeling of anger and misunderstanding remained painfully clear. It had been about something small at first, as most big fights often are, but words had been spoken that couldn't be taken back. Harsh words, unfair words, words that stung and festered, neither of them had truly meant to cause such a deep rift. Mary remembered her own stubbornness, her inability to see Sarah's side, and she imagined Sarah felt the same. Pride, like a thorny bush, had grown between them, making it impossible to reach out. After that day, the phone calls stopped, the visits ceased, and the comfortable silence that once bound them together became a cold, empty void. They both wanted to fix it, Mary was sure, but neither knew how. The longer they waited, the harder it became, until the silence felt too heavy to break, and they simply drifted apart, two ships lost at sea. Even with the thick wall of silence between them, Mary hadn't given up easily. There were so many times she had picked up the phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed Sarah's number, only to hang up before it rang. Then, she started leaving messages, short and simple at first, then longer, more heartfelt ones, filled with apologies and pleas for a chance to talk. She sent cards for birthdays and holidays, carefully chosen, hoping a small note of love might break through. Each time she waited by the phone, her heart a little lighter with hope, only for it to sink lower with each passing day of silence. Sarah never called back. The cards were never acknowledged. It was as if Mary's words, her attempts to reach across the divide, simply vanished into thin air. Each unanswered call, each ignored card, felt like a small rejection, adding another layer to Mary's already heavy sadness. It made her feel terribly alone, like she was shouting into a vast empty space. The world around her seemed to move on, but Mary remained stuck, trapped in the quiet echo of her daughter's absence. She wished she knew what more to do, but every door she tried to open seemed to be firmly shut. With every door to Sarah seemingly closed, Mary sought solace in the one place that offered quiet comfort and a sense of purpose: her garden. It was a small patch of earth behind her house, but to Mary, it was a world. She spent hours there, digging her hands into the rich soil, feeling the cool earth beneath her fingertips. She planted tiny seeds, each one a tiny promise of life, and carefully nurtured delicate seedlings. Watching things grow became a gentle balm for her aching heart. The bright colors of the flowers, the steady green of the leaves, the buzzing of bees, these simple wonders reminded her that life, despite its hardships, could still be beautiful. She'd spend entire afternoons weeding, watering, and talking to her plants as if they were old friends. Unlike people, plants didn't judge or reject. They simply responded to care with growth and beauty. This quiet communion with nature helped Mary feel a little better, a little less alone. In her garden, she could forget for a while the silence from Sarah and find a small measure of peace. It was a place where hope, even if just for a blooming rose, could still take root. One Tuesday morning, as Mary sat at her kitchen table sipping tea and planning her day in the garden, a thick envelope landed on her doormat. It wasn't the thin, colorful kind of envelope she always hoped might contain a card from Sarah. This one was plain, stark white, with a formal address in crisp, black letters. Her heart gave a little thump of worry even before she saw the sender, a law firm she didn't recognize. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The words inside were formal and stiff, full of legal terms that made her brow furrow. It took her a moment to understand what she was reading, but as the meaning slowly dawned on her, a cold dread began to spread through her. The letter was about her house, the very home where she had lived for decades, where Sarah had grown up, where so many of her precious memories resided. It spoke of property lines, legal claims, and a coming sale. This was not just any letter. It was a bombshell, dropping right into her already quiet and lonely life. It pulled her abruptly from the gentle comfort of her garden dreams, back into a world that suddenly felt very uncertain and threatening. The weight of it felt heavier than any sadness she had felt before. The legal jargon of the letter swam before Mary's eyes, but one sentence stood out like a flashing red light. She had to move. Her home, the very foundation of her life for so many years, was going to be sold. The words hit her like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs. This wasn't just about a house. It was about her entire world being uprooted. Where would she go? How would she manage? The thought of leaving the garden she had nurtured, the rooms filled with a lifetime of memories, was unbearable. A wave of fear washed over her, cold and dizzying. She felt utterly lost, like a small boat tossed in a stormy sea. Her mind raced, trying to grasp the enormity of it all. This house was more than just bricks and mortar. It was where Sarah had taken her first steps, where they had celebrated countless birthdays, where Mary had cried and laughed and loved. Now it was being taken away. The uncertainty of her future loomed large, a dark shadow over everything. She felt scared, truly scared, in a way she hadn't felt since she was a little girl. And in that moment of overwhelming panic, the aching silence from Sarah felt even heavier, making her feel even more alone in her crisis. The news of her impending move left Mary feeling utterly bewildered. Her mind was a jumble of questions, none of which had answers. Where would she go? How could she afford a new place? The practicalities of packing up a lifetime of belongings felt overwhelming, impossible. Every corner of her home held a memory, and the thought of leaving it all behind was like tearing pages from her own story. She sat for hours, the letter clutched in her hand, staring blankly at the walls, feeling a deep, consuming sense of despair. But even worse than the fear of the unknown, or the daunting task ahead, was the profound loneliness that settled over her. In times of crisis, a mother naturally turns to her child, and a child to her mother. Yet for Mary, that lifeline was severed. She couldn't call Sarah for advice, for comfort, or even just to share her terror. The thought that she was facing this monumental challenge completely alone, without the support of her daughter, made her feel even sadder. It was a fresh, sharp stab of pain on top of the old, dull ache. Sarah was the one person she truly wanted to lean on, and her absence now felt like a gaping hole, making Mary feel more lost and vulnerable than ever before. The heavy cloud of despair clung to Mary for days, making even the simplest tasks feel monumental. She barely touched her garden, the vibrant blooms seeming to mock her inner turmoil. But Mary wasn't entirely invisible. Her next-door neighbor, Mrs. Gable, a woman with a kind smile and a sharp eye, noticed Mary's drawn face and the unusual quietness around her house. Mrs. Gable had seen Mary's garden flourish and her spirits dip over the years, and she sensed something was deeply wrong. One afternoon, Mrs. Gable knocked gently on Mary's door, carrying a plate of freshly baked cookies. "Mary, dear, are you all right?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. "You haven't been out in your garden much lately." Mary, tears welling in her eyes, finally broke down and told her about the letter, the house, and the overwhelming fear. Mrs. Gable listened patiently, her hand resting gently on Mary's arm. "Oh, Mary," she said, her voice full of warmth, "you don't have to face this alone. We'll figure it out. I'll help you look for a new place. We can start tomorrow if you like." Her words, simple yet full of genuine care, were a lifeline in Mary's sea of worries. For the first time in days, Mary felt a tiny flicker of hope. As Mrs. Gable and Mary sat drinking tea, discussing potential small apartments and the daunting task of moving, Mrs. Gable paused, her gaze thoughtful. "Mary," she began gently, "this is a lot for anyone to handle alone. You've mentioned Sarah. Have you told her about this?" Mary's shoulders slumped. "I've tried so many times, Mrs. Gable. She never answers." "What's the point?" Mrs. Gable reached across the table and squeezed Mary's hand. "The point, dear, is that this is a big life change. Even if things are difficult, a daughter should know when her mother is going through something so huge. She might not respond, but she might. And if she knows you're going through this, it might just be the thing that makes her reach out." She smiled kindly. "It's worth one more try, Mary. Just one more letter, telling her everything. Don't you think?" Mary hesitated. The idea of another rejection was painful, but Mrs. Gable's words had planted a tiny seed of possibility. What if this crisis was big enough to finally break through Sarah's silence? What if it was the chance she had been waiting for? The thought, though fragile, began to take root alongside the hope for a new home. After her talk with Mrs. Gable, a fragile sense of hope began to bloom in Mary's heart. It was a risky step, but the thought of facing her future completely alone was far more daunting than another possible rejection. Taking a deep breath, Mary found her oldest stationery, the kind with delicate flowers along the edges, and sat down at her kitchen table. She didn't pick up the phone this time. A letter felt more personal, more permanent, a piece of her heart on paper. Her pen scratched across the page, slow at first, then flowing faster as the words poured out. She told Sarah everything, about the letter from the lawyers, the forced sale of their family home, and the overwhelming fear of being displaced. But more than that, she wrote about her feelings. She apologized for her part in their old fight, expressed her deep regret for the years of silence, and poured out all the love and longing she carried for her daughter. "I miss you, Sarah," she wrote, her hand trembling slightly. "More than words can say. I miss your laughter, your advice, just knowing you're there. This house holds so many memories of us, and losing it feels like losing a part of you all over again." It was a heartfelt plea, a final reach across the silent chasm. She sealed it with a prayer and dropped it in the mailbox, hoping against hope that this time it would make a difference. Days turned into a week, then 2, then 3. Mary tried to busy herself with preparations for moving, but her heart was still tethered to the letter she'd sent, swinging between faint hope and resigned disappointment. She checked her phone constantly, a habit she thought she had broken years ago. Each time it buzzed, her breath caught, only to release in a weary sigh when it was a telemarketer or a neighbor. Then, one quiet afternoon, as Mary was watering her window box flowers, the phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Her heart gave a sudden, painful lurch, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. Slowly, hesitantly, she picked it up. "Hello?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. A pause, then a voice, soft and a little shaky but unmistakable. "Mom, it's Sarah." Mary's world stopped. Her hand flew to her chest, where her heart was now hammering like a drum, a frantic mix of fear and an almost unbearable hope. After all these years, after all the silence, Sarah had called. What would she say? What would Mary say? The long-awaited moment was finally here, bringing with it a whirlwind of emotion she hadn't dared to feel for so long. "Mom, it's Sarah." The words hung in the air, a bridge over years of silence. Mary gripped the phone tighter, a knot of emotion tightening in her throat. She couldn't speak, only listen. Sarah's voice, though still a little hesitant, continued. "I got your letter, Mom. I'm so sorry I haven't talked to you for so long. I should have." Each word was a tiny step towards healing, a balm on Mary's old wounds. Sarah sounded genuinely sorry, and that alone felt like a miracle. "I read about the house," Sarah went on, her voice softer now. "That's terrible, Mom. I can't imagine how you must be feeling." Mary finally found her voice, a shaky whisper. "Oh, Sarah, it's been so hard." There was a pause, a moment where Mary braced herself for what might come next. Then, Sarah took a deep breath. "And Mom?" she said, her voice brightening. "I have some other news, something really big." Mary's heart fluttered. What could it be? After the years of silence and the sudden crisis, this new information felt like it could either bring more worry or, just maybe, a spark of unexpected joy. The mixture of fear and hope intensified, making her lean closer to the phone, eager and terrified all at once. Mary held her breath, waiting for Sarah's big news. Her mind raced through possibilities, from a new job to a move across the country. But what Sarah said next was something Mary had never dared to dream of. "Mom." Sarah's voice was filled with a joy Mary hadn't heard in years. "I'm having a baby. You're gonna be a grandma." The words hit Mary like a wave, washing away all the fear and worry, leaving only pure, radiant shock and happiness. A baby? A grandchild? Her hands flew to her mouth, a silent gasp escaping her lips. "A baby?" she finally managed to whisper, tears suddenly blurring her vision. "Oh, Sarah." Then, Sarah's voice grew soft and earnest. "And Mom," she continued, "I want you to be a part of it. A big part. I want you in my life again, and I want you to be in this baby's life." It was everything Mary had yearned for, a double blessing she hadn't even known to ask for. The thought of holding her daughter's child, of sharing this new chapter with Sarah, filled her heart with an overflowing, almost painful happiness. The chasm that had separated them for so long suddenly seemed to shrink, replaced by the promise of new life and a rekindled connection. The joy in Sarah's voice was contagious, and Mary felt a sudden, overwhelming release. The phone slipped slightly in her hand as warm, happy tears streamed down her cheeks. "A grandma," she repeated, the word tasting sweet and new on her tongue. It was a role she had secretly longed for, a hope she had almost given up on. But it wasn't just the baby. It was the invitation, the promise in Sarah's words. "I want you in my life again." Those words, more than anything else, made Mary's heart swell with gratitude and relief. She was going to be a grandma, yes, a wonderful, unbelievable dream come true. But more profoundly, she was going to have her daughter back. The deepest, most persistent ache in her heart was finally starting to heal. The years of silence, the painful memories of their fight, the loneliness, they didn't disappear, but they were now overshadowed by this incredible, unexpected gift. It felt like sunshine breaking through the clouds after a long, hard storm. She imagined holding Sarah's baby, sharing stories, making new memories. The thought brought a fresh cascade of tears, not of sorrow, but of pure, unadulterated happiness. Her family, once broken, was now on the path to being whole again. The phone call was just the beginning. A few days later, Sarah drove across town to Mary's house, a journey that had once been so common but now felt monumental. Mary's hands trembled as she opened the door, and for a moment, they just stood there, looking at each other, years of unspoken words hanging between them. Then, Sarah stepped forward, and they embraced, a hug that was both hesitant and fiercely needed. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Mary had written her heartfelt letter, and they talked. They talked about the old fight, both admitting their mistakes and the stubborn pride that had kept them apart. Sarah explained why she had pulled away, and Mary shared her loneliness and fear. It wasn't easy. There were tears and moments of awkward silence, but they pushed through. They talked about the baby, Sarah's hopes and worries, and Mary listened, offering advice and comfort. Hours melted away as they slowly, carefully, began to mend the broken pieces of their relationship. Each shared memory, each heartfelt apology, each hopeful plan for the future, was like a stitch in the fabric of their bond, slowly but surely making it whole again. The silence was gone, replaced by the gentle hum of two hearts reconnecting. With their relationship slowly healing, the practical matter of Mary's house still loomed large. But this time, Mary wasn't facing it alone. Sarah, full of renewed purpose and a desire to make amends, immediately stepped in. "Mom, you can't worry about this by yourself," she insisted. "Let's find you a lovely new place, somewhere cozy and closer to me." Sarah took charge, tirelessly searching online listings and driving Mary to look at various apartments and small cottages. She listened to Mary's concerns about cost and comfort, making sure to find places that felt right. It wasn't just a daughter helping her mother. It was a collaborative effort, a shared project that deepened their reconnection. After weeks of searching, they found it. A charming, smaller home with a sunny window perfect for Mary's plants, just a few blocks from Sarah's own house. The thought of being so close, of being able to pop over for tea or to help with the baby, filled Mary with a warmth she hadn't felt in ages. It was a physical manifestation of their healing, a new beginning for both their relationship and Mary's life. The fear of being lost had transformed into the joy of being found, right next door to her daughter. With the move settled and a new home found close by, Mary's focus shifted entirely to the upcoming arrival. Her hands, which once busied themselves with gardening to soothe her loneliness, now found purpose in preparing for her grandchild. She pulled out her old knitting needles and a basket of soft yarn, setting to work on tiny booties and blankets. Each stitch was woven with love and anticipation, a tangible expression of the joy that had re-entered her life. Sarah often came over, her growing belly a constant reminder of the miracle unfolding. They would sit together, Mary knitting, Sarah planning the nursery, and they would talk. Mary shared old family stories, tales of Sarah's own childhood, and anecdotes about her grandparents. These stories, once locked away in Mary's lonely mind, now flowed freely, connecting generations. They talked about names, colors, and the wonders of new life. It was a beautiful, gentle way to rebuild their connection, brick by emotional brick. Mary felt useful, cherished, and deeply happy. Helping Sarah get ready for the baby wasn't just about practical tasks. It was about reclaiming their shared history and weaving a new, hopeful future together. The day the baby was born was a whirlwind of excitement and pure, unadulterated joy. Mary rushed to the hospital the moment Sarah called, her heart overflowing with anticipation. She waited patiently, clutching the tiny, hand-knitted blanket she had made, a tangible piece of her love. When the nurse finally led her into Sarah's room, Mary's eyes immediately went to the small bundle cradled in Sarah's arms. There, wrapped snugly, was her grandchild. A perfect, tiny human with wisps of dark hair and miniature hands. Sarah looked up, her face tired but radiant, and smiled. "Mom, Meet your grandchild." When Sarah gently placed the baby in Mary's arms, a profound silence fell over Mary. Holding that precious, new life, Mary felt a surge of love so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. It was a love she hadn't felt in a long, long time, a deep, primal connection that transcended all past hurts and disappointments. In that moment, cradling her grandchild, Mary felt a completeness she thought she had lost forever. The future, once so uncertain, now stretched out bright and full of promise, woven with the threads of family, new life, and rediscovered love. As Mary cradled her grandchild, a profound realization settled over her, warm and comforting like the baby in her arms. She looked from the innocent face of the newborn to Sarah, who was beaming beside her. It had been such a terrifying time, that period when the letter arrived, threatening to take away her home and leave her truly alone. The thought of losing her house, the place filled with so many memories, had been utterly frightening. But now, in this moment, Mary understood. That scary, unsettling event had been the unexpected push that brought her and Sarah back together. If not for the crisis, for the sheer need to reach out, perhaps the years of silence would have stretched on indefinitely. Losing her house, which had felt like the worst thing imaginable, had opened the door to the most wonderful thing, the return of her beloved daughter, and the joyous arrival of her grandchild. It was a twist of fate, a difficult path that had led to an unimaginable blessing. Mary realized that sometimes, from the deepest sorrow and fear, the greatest happiness can bloom, bringing back what was lost and adding something precious and new. She held her grandchild a little tighter, a smile spreading across her face. With her daughter by her side and her grandchild in her arms, Mary's once quiet and lonely life blossomed anew. Her days were no longer spent in silent reflection on past hurts, but filled with the cheerful babble of a baby, the easy conversation with Sarah, and the shared joy of new family moments. Laughter, a sound that had been a stranger in her home for so long, now echoed through her new, cozy rooms. Sarah often dropped by with the baby, and Mary would read stories, sing lullabies, and simply revel in the sweet presence of her grandbaby. Mary found herself gardening again, but this time with a lighter heart. She planted bright flowers that mirrored the happiness she felt inside. The pain of estrangement, once a heavy shadow, had been lifted, replaced by a deep sense of belonging and love. She often thought about the scary time with the house, and how something so difficult had paved the way for such immense good. It was a powerful lesson that even after the hardest times, when all hope seemed lost, wonderful things could happen. Her life was proof, a vibrant testament to the resilience of the human heart and the enduring power of family love. Mary smiled, knowing her greatest joy had come from an unexpected journey through sorrow. The arrival of the baby marked a beautiful new chapter, not just for Mary but for her entire family. The small new home near Sarah became a hub of activity and warmth. Mary's days were now filled with the sweet sounds of her grandchild's coos and giggles, the comforting presence of Sarah, and the simple joys of shared meals and quiet afternoons. The garden in her new place, though smaller, thrived under her care, reflecting the flourishing happiness within her heart. Mary, Sarah, and the baby spent many happy years together. They built new traditions, celebrated holidays, and supported each other through life's ups and downs. Sarah often brought the baby over, and Mary would read stories, her voice soft and loving, or teach the little one how to plant seeds in tiny pots. The memories of the painful estrangement faded into the background, replaced by a rich tapestry of new moments, woven with love, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bond of family. Mary cherished every single day, grateful for the unexpected turn her life had taken. She had faced her hardest time, but what came next was a profound happiness that filled her golden years with more love than she had ever dared to hope for.